Greetings, students. This is Unit 2, Week 2, our weekly introduction for wonders. And we're going to be looking at an essential question, that is, what can you do to get the information you need? And if we're looking at this picture, you can see that this young lady is probably learning a little bit about coral reef as she's swimming. So one of the ways that we can get information is by actually exploring something. So if she wants to learn about the coral reef, she could go ahead and swim in it. That would be great. She could interview an expert to uncover or reveal information about the coral. She could also collect information about coral and other sea life from books in her library, or to go on the internet and research some of the coral that she sees. So again, we're going to be thinking about what could you do to get information that you need. So we're going to be using a vocabulary sheet to write our words on and their meanings. When you are done, you need to glue that sheet into your 3-subject notebook in the vocabulary section. So we'll get started. Our first word that we have is circumstances. And circumstances are conditions or events that exist with other things and may have an effect on them. So a circumstance that you see here in this picture is the circumstances the road is flooded. So we can't necessarily cross the road because we're supposed to turn around and not drown whenever there's water crossing a road, and we should not drive through it. So our circumstances of getting from one side of this road to the other have changed, and we need a different path. Our next word is consideration. Consideration. It is careful thought that is needed before making a final decision. And in this picture, we have a lady who is showing consideration between the 2 different fruits. She's probably checking for freshness. The next word is consults. Consults. And when we consult something, we are looking for advice or looking for better information. And in this picture, we have a man who is consulting, or he's consults his map before he makes his trip. We might actually consult Google if we needed to. The next word is destiny. And destiny is what happens, especially when it seems like it was determined to happen in advance. And in this picture, we have a young lady who thinks that maybe her destiny is someday to become a famous ballerina. The next word we have is expectations. And when you have expectations, you believe or expect that certain things will happen. The next word we have is presence. Presence. This picture is a picture of the Queen of England, and presence is kind of the area around or near a person. So when you are in the presence of the Queen of England, you have certain things that you cannot and can do, one of which is you can't shake her hand unless she offers it to you. Another thing that you might see in her presence is a lot of security. You can kind of see them in the background. She definitely has a strong presence around her, as she has been the leader of her country for many, many years. Our next word is reveal. Reveal. And this means to show a hidden object or to display it. So in this picture, we have someone pulling back a curtain to reveal something behind it. The next and last word we have is unsure. Unsure. And what that means is that you are not certain about something. And in this picture, the young man in the chess game is unsure of what his next move might be, or he might be unsure about what his opponent is going to do. Okay, that ends your vocabulary words. Make sure you've written them down, but the video is going to keep going here for just a second. This week, the genre that we're going to be working on is understanding fairy tales. And of course, fairy tales are going to be not true stories. So here's some information about common elements of fairy tales. It usually has a theme or teaches an important lesson. Usually includes magic, fantasy, or make-believe elements. There's usually a problem or conflict in the story and a happy ending when it is resolved. This is the ones where we usually hear and they lived happily ever after. Fairy tales are usually set in the past, although we now have some modern fairy tales that you're going to be getting to explore this year. They often begin with once upon a time. Fairy tales often include events, people, or objects in sets of 3. The other number that crops up a lot of times in fairy tales is 7. So sometimes like we have the 7 dwarfs. The setting is often in an enchanted place and may include people of royalty, so kings and queens and prince and princesses. Animals can sometimes talk or have other special abilities. And a fairy tale usually includes good and evil characters. So yet just a little bit more information. Usually they begin with once upon a time, once long ago, or long, long ago, things like that. Usually the setting is a castle, a forest, or a town. We have good or nice characters and mean or bad characters, and many of the characters are animals or members of royalty. The story has magic, and like we said, the numbers 3 or 7 crop up quite a bit. The story has a problem, and the problem in the story is usually solved. And there's usually good that wins or outsmarts bad, and the ending is usually happily ever after. In order for a story to be a fairy tale, it must have at least most of these characteristics, so at least 6 or more. So if you're reading a story and you're wondering if it's a fairy tale, if you go back and look at this list, you would see that they would have at least 6 or more of these elements within them. All right, I hope you enjoy your stories this week. This ends your video. Make sure you get those vocabulary things done, and you'll be asked to be turning them in this week. Thanks. You may end the video.